So welcome to Developing Alliance Match Strategy. I'm Kina Li.
And I'm Richard McCain.
So let's move the slide. All right, so I'm the current strategy sub-team lead of Team 1678. I am also the match strategist. And at this event, I was actually the drive coach today.
And I'm one of the strategy mentors and also our scouting software mentors, along with other roles that I have on the team. And I've been with the team since 2012.
How many years have you been involved with FRC?
About the same amount of time. Somebody else can do the math. I already screwed up addition earlier today, so.
All right, so over today, we're going to be covering why strategy is important, general things about match strategy, the way that we prepare and execute it, alliances that worked throughout our team's history, and we might be covering a session about pick lists depending on time, and we'll leave around like 20-15 minutes for a Q&A at the end. So why is strategy important? Oh, yeah.
No, you can turn off the lights.
Yeah. Thank you. Right. So something we'd like to say is that your robot wins matches, but your scouting wins competitions.
And what does that mean?
So what this actually means is that obviously your robot is the one out there physically winning your match. But the thing is, your robot can only take you so far. Your entire alliance is what actually decides the outcome of the match. And you can only achieve this through strategy, and in extension, it's your scouting that matters. So why are you here? So FRC is obviously a 3v3 competition with rotating alliances. And the format of this event makes it so that strategy is uniquely important for FRC matches. So individually, robots can win single matches, but clearly they can't win consistently over an entire tournament. In fact, FRC has created the format in ways which some goals are unachievable with just one robot, such as the endgame, or like in 2022, the climb RP. So being aware of the entire alliance's capabilities will increase your likelihood of success. All right. And let's begin with match strategy. So I'm going to start with how we prepare our strategy sub-team as a whole. So throughout the year, we go through many games and we analyze previous FRC games. There are a lot of repeating patterns, such as just the general formatting of auto, teleop, endgame. RPs tend to be the same year-round. It's just a different task to complete. So what we do right at kickoff is that we have the entire team read the game manual, take a game manual test. Everybody should know all of the content in it. Everyone should know generally how the game flows, how the game, like what we're looking to achieve. And we begin the season by listing a bunch of whats and a bunch of hows. And it's important that you note that these are separate things. So a what is a ultimate goal that we want to achieve, and a how is the way through which we end up at that goal. So the whats are ultimately more important than these hows. So like a how might be like, oh, we want a climber with 2 arms or something, but a what is like, we want to achieve the climb RP. So another thing that we do is predict strategies and designs for the season. So ahead of time, we can think about what other teams and what our teams might be doing throughout that season. So another way you can prepare for a successful match strategy is through scouting. So we pride ourselves on our scouting system. We have a completely digital live scouting system. We have an app called The Viewer, which organizes all of the data that we are receiving throughout the day with a bunch of objective and subjective metrics. For example, during this year in 2022, we have like the number of cargo scored in the upper hub, lower hub. We have average number of cargo scored in auto, so we can get a good view of like what this robot is capable of, how our autos could be compatible if we were to be on the same alliance, what we could exploit if they were on the opposing alliance. And it's really great that we have all of this information categorized so that we can look at it in an organized fashion before the match starts. So to go with our subjective metrics, these are actually the more obscure ones, I suppose. So we actually look at driver awareness and quickness of the robot. And the way that we rate these is through a ordinal fashion. So we would look at all the robots on one alliance. We would rate them 3 to 1, 3 being the strongest in that quality, or 1 being the weakest in that quality. And this actually works by, being ordinal sorting. Once we have enough data on every single robot at that competition, we can match each 2 robots and form one direct list. So often, ranking points and just raw scoring power do not show you the hidden gems. So if you were to just look at OPR, for example, this would not show you which robots would be great as a second pick or a robot that you want for defense. So this is why we have these subjective metrics. We have specially selected roles for this, who are students who are part of our strategy sub-team, and they're trained throughout the year. So another thing we do is we collect pit data. So on Friday, I am actually the one who goes around doing pit scouting. We take pictures of each robot. We talk to their drive team. We try to get a sense of just where they're at, how their robot is doing, especially if they're needing help with mechanism fixes. We actually have our Citrus seals and our Citrus service. So this year, we mostly had our seals going around testing climbs with people, hopefully getting climbs working. And then we also just take a look at what their drivetrain is. Obviously, Swerve, West Coast, or even Mecanum. These are important things to note, especially with defense. So obviously, a West Coast drive might not be as quick and maneuverable, but it might also be stronger, as in just heavier. They just go, they point, they turn, they go. Versus a Swerve drive robot, it might be quicker, but they might not know, their drive team might not know how to control it as just clearly. So, all right. So one more thing we do is that before each match, we have to think about what our match goals for it, what we are looking to do. So sometimes 4RP is not actually feasible, and in which case we would have to decide, do we focus on the 2RP from the win or the 2 bonus RP? So in some cases, we play just to outscore the opponent alliance. In some cases, it's more predictable to score those unchanging RP. We know that we can secure those, and if we happen to actually win through points, that's just a side effect. Obviously, this depends year to year. Hi. Okay. And we also like to analyze our match schedule ahead of time. Obviously, if we have the preparation to do so, if the match schedule comes out early enough, we can look at the match schedule, identify our toughest matches of the day, and give those matches extra time. If we prioritize those, we can work with our partners earlier in the day. We have more time to discuss and just rethink. If a robot breaks unexpectedly or something happens, we can have our seals work with them. We can have Citrus service work with them. And yeah. All right, so we're off to execution of match strategy. So generally what I do as the match strategist is I think about what we're trying to plan to do, but that is not at all a firm, I'm telling you what to do. I would then go and try to find all of the teams, grab them, we get in a huddle all at once, and we would discuss together. This is better because then we could actually inform each other of our robot's individual capabilities and compatibility. So obviously, this year, you might want one robot doing a 5-ball, one robot doing a 3-ball on the other side, and another robot just taxiing in the middle. And you have to make sure that your auto routines do not coincide or interfere with each other. And another thing that we would do is sometimes we divide the field during teleop. Depending on where your driver station is located, vision, a bunch of different things, such as just how experienced your drive team is with being on the far side, for example, or avoiding fouls or playing safe. You would have to discuss and see who would be on what side of the field. Another thing which is very important is defense. Again, this quality is not the most obvious when looking at just like TBA metrics. We would have to talk with the team. Often just talking with each other, talking with your alliance partners helps you understand if something is like broken on their robot. If there is a sudden change that you need to make, you can work it out together. And finally, endgame. You would have to look at like how fast each robot can complete their endgame, how compatible your robots are, and like whether it's better to have a robot stay out and keep scoring or to go and perform the endgame. So for example, once again, during rapid react, you might actually want your highest scorer to stay out of the hangar zone and instead keep running cycles without climbing. So we actually had one match today where both of our alliance partners could not climb. So we decided that it would be optimal to just continue cycling in order to try to just score enough cargo for that RP. And again, we sometimes receive alliance partner requests, or like we just have a very strong pick that we would like. And so we either go and talk to them ahead of time on like Sunday so that we can like merge our pick lists or talk about what we're looking for in our other picks, or just see if they're willing to accept us, and just be ready beforehand for elims. So yeah. Again, so in our alliance, in our opposing alliance, we like to try to look at strengths, weaknesses, predicted roles like offense or defense, counter defense, or actions during the match. Early in the season or during qualification matches, alliances tend to go far more offensive than they do in late season or during elims. During qualifications, most teams are just trying to secure those RP, and often they're not really worrying about their opposing alliance. Again, this depends on the year, but mostly for this year. And then in late season, often there's a dedicated second pick whose role is to perform defense. So this sort of both complicates strategy and simplifies it, as in you can tell there is one set alliance. You know what role each robot is going to perform. So yeah. So again, I am the match strategist. So I actually perform a specific role at competitions. I am the same person like throughout the season. I'm actually not part of drive teams, so that gives me the freedom to like walk around and try to find other teams or our alliance partners and talk while our drive team is like fixing our robot, running a systems check, or just like generally being on the field. So my role, I advise the drive coach, who is generally our mentor, Mike Corsetto. I would also meet with our alliance partners in between our matches, and we would discuss strategy, as I said prior to this. I actually have a clipboard with like the field layout where I can draw out a rough preliminary plan and then also diagram it once we talk together. So obviously, the key takeaway is that my role is to make the drive team's job as easy to execute as possible. So when you're the drive team, you don't really want to be thinking that much, which might be a bad thing to say, but just making their role as easy to just perform as possible with no mistakes. They just do something like clear. So yeah, this is just what my strategy board looks like. There's a section for drawing out our autos to make sure that our pathing doesn't intersect. There is a section for directions directly after auto, and there's a diagram for sectioning off areas of the field for teleop. We also have a specific diagram for our climbs. So sometimes teams are better climbing wall side or closer to their alliance station, depending on vision or just how they've practiced. So for our robot, like we actually preferred climbing on the wall side, so then I would discuss this with our alliance partners. We would work out something. Sometimes robots are too wide or like must climb in a specific order based on how fast their climbers are. So this is, again, something that you'd have to take into account and communicate to other teammates. So we now are here with alliances that worked. So Richard is going to take it away. Yeah, let's switch. We have some clips from previous matches of just our team history and previous strategic decisions.
So I'm going to talk about our history. Basically, what happened was that our alliance, or our team, which started in 2005, we would always get knocked out in quarterfinals until 2010. And then 2010 through starting in 2011, we actually won the Sacramento Regional, went to champs for the first time. We were a third pick on an alliance there. 2012, we also won the Sacramento Regional and went to champs. We were a first pick, but we got knocked out in the quarterfinals as well at champs that year. Then in 2013, we introduced our electronic scouting system, and we started thinking not about our robot, but about our alliance. And we started conceiving strategies of the entire alliance at that point, rather than just thinking about what our robot was doing on the field. And that really made a very big change in our team and the way we looked at things. And so I'm going to go through and talk about some of our alliance experiences and lessons that we learned from past matches, and advance to the next slide, see what I talk about. So we talked about how our alliance strategy begins at kickoff and how we assign tasks to individual alliance mates that we expect to be on the field depending on the strengths of the robots of each one of those. And really, as Kina said, that robot capabilities are dependent on other robots in our alliance, and we really try to be aware of that. Next slide. We want general rules. First one is make your alliance mates look good. This is not about you. It's actually about making your alliance mates look really great out on the field, because if you do that, you're going to have a winning alliance. Be aware of what on the field, what is happening within your alliance and what's happening on other alliances. You need to look for opportunities. Things pop up during matches. You'll see other teams executing very interesting alliances. We've learned a lot of strategies, match strategies, from watching other teams create innovative strategies. And finally, take advantage of your luck. Sometimes your luck is a schedule. So like in 2013, we had a really easy schedule at championships, and it allowed us to rank first and be able to pick our alliance. We had a whole strategy about how we actually did our draft strategy based on the fact that we picked first. We were probably not even the top 10 best robots that year in our division, but we ended up going on and winning our division. So I'm going to walk through some past examples, so go ahead. We're going to see if this works. Where's my YouTube video? Because we're having a little bit slow YouTube connection. See, oh, here it goes. Okay, so this is 20, just let it run and it's 15 seconds, it should loop. So this was the first time we really executed an alliance match strategy with other robots. And this is a final at Central Valley Regional. What we did is our robot had a ground pickup. This is the Frisbee game, Ultimate Ascent. So you'll see them shooting Frisbees across the field. And we ended up picking a full court shooter robot, a robot that could shoot the entire length of the field with a Frisbee and score. We had a robot that could pick up Frisbees at the other end off the ground and shoot them in. So if they missed, we would be able to swoop down and pick up the Frisbees. But one of the most important things is this robot could outscore us. And so we wanted to protect our best score. So at the beginning of the match, if you click it one more time, I'll show you. We're going to watch what happens with 840 is the robot. They are here, and they're driving around the corner. We're here, and we're protecting. We're keeping the two red robots from driving up and preventing them from getting to the human feeder. And so they're going to line up, and we're pushing off the 2 red robots that are trying to score, and they start shooting. And they ended up raining in discs through that whole match. I don't think that we scored any discs in that match after auto, because we were protecting them, and they were scoring all of our points. Even though we were the alliance captain, we protected that robot because they were the best scorer on our alliance. So sometimes you have to self-sacrifice in order to make your alliance better. And so that's just one example of that. We did a lot of that year, where we did a lot of matching between our robot and other robots. So next slide is 2014. So you talk about trying to contribute. That 2014 is aerial assist, or aerial assault as it's sometimes called. And you had to pass the robot. Each time you passed the ball through another robot, you got either 10 points the first time you scored, or 20 points if you got the second pass through the robot. So that second robot was extremely valuable. The most you could score in a cycle was 60 points, and you had to pick up 20 of them from your second robot. So you had to make sure your second robot could score. Well, as we were flying out to St. Louis, we identified a particular rookie team that did not have the ability to pass through a ball, and it was a very tight match. So we actually sent a mentor to their pit, and he worked with them during the entire competition in order to get their robot running and to be able to coach them in order to play quite well. They had been like 1-9 at their district competition. They ended up going 5-5 because we helped them out. But as they are sitting right here, and what you're going to see is they couldn't drive the length of a field when we started. They're going to be, well, they've already pulled up there. And what we did is we passed through, then that's us picking up, and we're going to pass over at the end. But what's interesting is this structure that is on top of their robot, we brought a spare sidearm pickup for us to use. We gave it to them to use for the entire competition. They took it, they assembled it, and they mounted it on their robot so they could actually play the game. So we were making them look good. That was the important thing. And they were able to contribute, and we won this match. It was an upset for us winning that match. And we ended up going on and seeding #1 in that division, and then going to finals at Einstein. So next one.
Oh, I just wanted to add that to expand on what I said about our seals. So this year we actually had them bringing like a spare every bot climber, which they could install on an alliance partner if we happened to be paired with 2 robots who could not climb. So hopefully, in the best scenario, we would then both be able to climb. We would get that climb RP. We would both look good. So yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
We actually, in 2015, 50-27 took Arcane Grabbers to the championship. They played against us with Arcane Grabbers at championship. So yes, they did get to keep it. That's part of the deal. Is once you give somebody a part, you try not to take it back.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they've changed to a certain degree, but actually there are still ways of being able to give teams parts. So, for example, the Everybot climber, because it's a COTS part, we could give it to that team and they could keep it. So that's what we do. We're trying to make everybody look better as best as we can. So this is understanding your opponent's vulnerabilities. We're watching in 2017, we're watching the competition, and we realize it's between us and 118, who's from Houston, and 330, who was a team from Los Angeles that just retired. They won 2 or 3 world championships along the way. The 3 of us were fighting it out for the top spot in our division in 2017. And we noticed something very interesting about 330 that was a vulnerability. And we're going to hit this thing. Now watch what happens at the beginning. Whoops.
Sorry.
Watch what happens at the beginning of this match, and watch what's happening along the rims this is the end of auto. Now what's going on here? Why are all those balls? We're the Red Alliance. Why are all those balls going on the ground? Does anybody know what might have been happening in that year? One of the key things is that In order to shoot fuel, you had to be able to you had to be able to load your robot with these fuel balls out of the hoppers and then go and shoot into the fuel in order to score points. Well, 330, it turns out, didn't have a ground pickup. They had to load directly from the hopper. And we saw that late in the competition, and we went, okay, off of auto, we go and we knock all of the balls out of the hoppers. They were unable to score any fuel after the auto period. And they had to be a gear runner the whole rest of the match that made them very vulnerable. Meanwhile, us in 118, we were able to pick up fuel and just shoot fuel during the entire match. So that was a case of where we saw vulnerability and we exploited it, and we ended up winning the match.
I suppose another example of this during Rapid React would be that behind the hub, like across from your opponent's driver stations, they actually can't see any of the cargo that are like directly up against the fender. So what you could have a defense bot do is actually ferry the opponent's balls and place them behind the hub so that their drivers can't actually see it unless they're paying super close attention to the opposing alliance, which generally it's difficult to do that. So we would actually just like hide like 4 balls back there, and there's only 11 total normally. So now you've just starved them of basically a good chunk of their resources.
Yeah, and 3128 wrote an auto routine that we used at Champs where they did that. They took balls and put them behind the hub so that the other alliance couldn't see it. And then this one is not ours. This is one of my favorite strategies from 2017. There were lots of interesting strategies in this year. It's a very unusual game. This is the Michigan State Championship, and what I want you to watch is actually, this is right after the auto routine. Let's see, I want to hit that return one more time. Just a second, let me catch up, go and start it again, because what I want to watch is we want to watch this window, okay? Watch what happens this is the end of auto. Whoops. Now we get to reload. Here we go. They're driving up underneath. This is where the gears are loaded and then taken up into the tower. This is the red tower there at the front of. What is this Blue Alliance robot doing? And there's another Blue Alliance robot on the other side sitting there. What are they doing? Right. They're blocking 2 of the 3 gear locations. This is the Michigan State Championship in the semifinals. Well, they had fuel, but you couldn't. If you could cut off gear scoring, it was easier to score gears than fuel during the teleop period. Yeah. They parked there for until 45 seconds were left in the match. And they tried to cut off the other alliance. I don't think that they were successful in that match, but they got much closer in that match than they would have otherwise. Nobody had really thought about the fact that you could block the gear scoring, and there was no penalty for doing that. So they held the other alliance down to only scoring 2 rotors in that match, or instead of getting to 4 rotors, because they were able to shut down those gears. And so this was just like, this strategy didn't emerge until very late in the season. I think that this particular team, 2337, who was on the Blue Alliance side, tried it or used it first at a district competition. And then they went through their division. They actually won their division out of the 4 divisions at Michigan by using this strategy. And then they eventually got overwhelmed by higher scoring alliances in the finals.
Yeah, I believe that scoring the fuel actually had a ×3 multiplier in auto. So most teams would prioritize scoring fuel during auto and then running gears during teleop. So that was why it was so destructive.
And then finally, is this the last one? Oh no, this is the next last one. So this one is this is how a strategy works perfectly, a match strategy. And this is the 2019 match. In the middle of our 2018 match, in the middle of it, you have the scales that you're balancing. And so we're the Red Alliance. We have one team loading cubes into the exchange, into the switch. Well, they were working on our switch. They also turned around and put cubes into the exchange. You have us working a separate task. We're picking up these cubes and putting them up in the scale. And then we have 399, our first pick, on the far side, picking up cubes and throwing them into the opposing switch. And so everybody has a clear role. And if you watch the other team, their robots are all running all over the place. They don't have a clear set of roles that they're running. Ours are really set. Everybody knows what they're doing. The Blue Alliance, they don't really seem to have quite the same. They're bumping into each other over here. They're over here trying to fight for a cube kind of ineffectively, and they're not putting any cubes up because they're not really running a coherent strategy. So you can really see the difference in effectiveness between running a really coherent strategy with clear roles for each team in these matches. And then finally, one last match. So this is
in 2018, since there's 3 very clear roles to perform, 3 locations to be scoring. Yeah.
So, well, actually, and so if you see 254's strategies, the 254 put out their strategy maps for Einstein this last year, and you could see how they divided up the field into 3 separate parts for each one of their robots to basically stay in those particular zones and score cargo from those zones. And so that's another example of trying to stay out of the way. So this is Paul's favorite thing. So this is the World Championships in 2015. That's the year that we won it. This is the semifinals. And this particular match, we lost this match. But if you watch, look at that. So we have a can. 118 had a can that was trapped on top of their can grabber. And their driver, who had no depth perception, by the way, is basically driving around trying to avoid knocking over stacks with the can. He bumped a couple of the cans. So Paul's team is over here. And so they swing around, boom. Well, luck, that was one luck, a bit of luck. He's going to swing around. I think it's long enough for a swing around. Oh, he just missed that one too. So that's what you need sometimes is a little bit of luck in order for your alliance strategy to play out. Well, except for they had to. They did stacks. The thing is that we needed to score enough points in order to do well. And fortunately, we had probably the 4th or 5th best robot in our division. Actually, fell to us as the 24th pick because they must have been sandbagging. No, actually, in Sacramento Regional, they actually outranked us in the Sacramento Regional. 118 was number 1, 1671 was second, and then we were third. And so we knew that they were really good. And they unfortunately had a lot of problems trying to execute an auto routine at Champs, and the other teams just missed their opportunity of picking them up. So.
So we wanted to be competitive, so we tried to add a 3-toed auto, and all it did was screw everything up. And we only got it to work twice in our shop.
So that's another lesson when you go to a big competition. Although I do have to admit that you were trying to reach, to make a big reach.
When we saw that, we were actually kind of ticked off because we go 1678 and 118 again. To add so that we would be competitive. We were not sandbagging. We did get accused by a couple people of sandbagging, as I recall. But no, it was just we were trying to, and all that auto did was screw up our stacking routines.
Yeah. So this is the example I talked about luck. 2013, great schedule. 2014, we had a few lucky breaks. 2015, we had this kind of luck. So I can go through and talk about there were luck, and most of the times when we failed, it hasn't been our luck. It's been our problem of not executing. I can't really think of a time. I can only think of one time where we had bad luck was in 2018 when a robot failed to come off at the beginning of the match correctly and just blew everything apart. 2019 it was, and hurt our ranking. That's the only time I can think of where bad luck was really something that that hurt us in this match. But we've had a lot of good luck. So next slide. Is there? Are we basically? Well, I think that we've got.
We've got time.
Do people have questions?
Yeah.
Because we've got about 25 minutes. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Specifically for like 2018 when there were like defined goals, you know, one person would do each switch or something.
Mm-hmm.
How would you recover from losing a switch? Like, how would the strategy be adapted?
Well, so the big focus actually in 2018 was the scale.
I mean, the scales.
Oh, if you lost the scale. Well, in what? In quals or in?
I mean, let's say.
So it's different. So in quals, you wouldn't necessarily have your first pick wouldn't necessarily be able to place on the scale at the top. And in fact, in 2018, if you lost the scale early on and you didn't recover, you were going to lose because it was a zero-sum game. And we calculated that. So that's actually we talk about what calculating at the beginning of the competition what types of scores you can get. And 2015 and 2018 were zero-sum games. Points you scored took points away from the other alliance. And so there were actually chokehold strategies. And 2018, the chokehold strategy was to hold the scale until I think 35 seconds was left in the match and score 30 points in the exchange. And it was a lock. You would win. It might have been actually with 50 seconds left. Anyways, it was a significant amount of time left in the match if you held the scale. So all of our focus was on the scale. It didn't matter. You couldn't win from the switch. So the only way, if you lost the scale early on, you were done. It didn't matter. So you had to focus everything on the scale. So in quals, if we didn't have a second robot that could help us, we would just pile up on the scale. If we had a second robot, we would pick our first robot in competitions that they could reach high enough to reach the scale when it was tipped away from us. We weren't interested in robots that could only put on the scale on the low side. That wasn't helpful. Hmm?
It's all about the fourth level.
Yes, right. So that's you think about that's one of the cases of where you're thinking a little bit more about it, not thinking about where the robot will whether they can do the scale, but how can they do the scale, which is something that becomes more important as you go along. So you had another question. Okay.
Oh, right. For more context, in 2018, there was time-based scoring with the big scale in the middle. So basically, that's what Richard was talking about with zero sum. So when you are scoring on that scale, you're directly taking points away from your opponents because only one person can be holding that scale at a time. So did you have a question?
Yeah. You mentioned early on a scouting app. I was
Yeah.
wondering, I know we're not leave Wi-Fi to the robots. How does the scouting data get communicated from app to app?
Right. So I actually wouldn't be the best person to ask about this because my main sub-team is hardware design, but we do have resources on our website. So it's citruscircuits.org, and there's scouting white papers. There's a link at the end of this presentation. So it details how our scouting app works. Do you know that much about how our servers work?
Right. So we use cell phone service mostly, and then we use QR codes in order to communicate from the tablets to the computer itself. And then and there's a presentation. I think there's actually one we're competing with right now about our scouting app, us in 2073, and that will be recorded and put up. That we'll talk about more. And there's also other workshops on the scouting app up on our website,
I believe that one was on
citruscircuits.org.
Friday, so yesterday.
Oh, was it Friday?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, there's lots of materials that we have about that, and we can talk to you more about it as well.
One related to that, how feasible just overall would you say it is for a small team with not a huge amount of resources to set up a fully digital scouting system?
I
Is that impossible?
No. How many kids are on your team?
8 to 30 comp last year.
Oh yeah, you definitely you have it. So we started our scouting app with 10 students. Our team had about 20 students on it, and 10 of them were dedicated to dealing with the scouting app. Because you only need our scouting system. You only need a minimum of 8 plus a programmer. So you need 2 super scouts and 6 objective scouts, and the objective scouts are just pushing buttons. And you can set it up in Google Forms. We have
Right.
other resources on how you can set this up. There's lots of scouting apps out there, and then the Super Scout system that we run just takes 2, and it's really simple to program.
The Super Scouts are the ones who collect the subjective data yeah. So for this competition, we're actually not running our digital scouting system. We're actually, unfortunately, doing paper scouting. So good return to the basics.
Yeah, well, we never scout at Capital City Classic because we're always volunteering, and
Yeah.
then somebody's doing a pick list off the seat of their pants. Very sophisticated.
All right, any more questions?
I have a question. So your match strategies,
Right.
I imagine they evolve as the competition goes on.
Yeah.
Like when at the beginning, you just don't have much data,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or,
Yeah,
and so-
definitely.
so
Sorry,
what
keep
do
going.
you- As the person who's working with the other, the alliance partners to plan that strategy, how do you manage that at the, like qualifying match 1 versus qualifying match 10? Is that
Right.
change?
So yeah, definitely. For early matches, another difficult thing is like you have to queue before opening ceremonies. But it makes it really difficult to find your partners for one and also to communicate with them. Especially for early qualifications, we have to talk directly to our alliance partners to like understand what their robot does because we don't have any scouting data at that point. So for example, this year we went to Port Hueneme, which was a week 1 competition, and we just went in with like 0 knowledge of our alliance partners.
Well, not quite zero.
Not zero, but not scouting data. So
Yes.
what we do is on Fridays, we can watch those practice matches. We can go around the pits and talk directly to teams. And hopefully that gives us a solid base for those like early qualifications. But obviously, as the event continues, we have more information. It gets easier to like understand and predict what's going to happen in each match. So yeah.
Yeah, and you see that data evolving in our viewer. So that viewer is updated. The other thing is a week 1 competition, you can actually use OPR data in order to rank teams on a preliminary basis. And the correlation from year to year in OPR data is roughly 0.65. So it's a pretty reasonably good indicator of how well teams will be doing the next year.
Yeah. Another thing is just do not assume robot capabilities based on their RP score. Don't do that.
Yeah, some teams get carried. There's a question back there somebody had. You want to stand up and so we can hear you?
Mhm.
No, that's fine. I'll probably repeat your question too.
So if you know that you guys like as a team, if you know your capabilities as a team, would you say that maybe going full defense spots is like kind of risky kind of thing, kind of play? Because it's the easier person if you do really good as defense spots, it might be kind of a good thing, but at the same time you're unable to score, which might not be good on a team. What are your thoughts on that?
So your question is should you, as a team, is it risky to go as a full defense spot? Would you have a thought? I have thoughts.
Okay. In my personal opinion, I think it's really good when a team like recognizes that they have like more potential as being a really strong defender rather than potentially a weaker offensive robot. And I think that's like a good quality to recognize like just what you could do to make your entire alliance more successful. And also that's a lot, like the point of our scouting is to recognize those like hidden gems who might be lower in the RP like rankings, but are actually really strong robots to have on an alliance.
So
yeah.
I ditto on that, and a great example is actually when we played at Chesney Champs a couple of weeks ago. We had our draft list. We went at 24 plus teams in order to be ready for that. We had 10 or 12 teams that were offensive first pick robots. This competition is the top robots in the world. 5 teams from Einstein were in this competition, so we had the top 12. Most of them were alliance captains, actually, or first picks. They all went as first picks. Above our 13th and 14th picks were what we thought were our top defensive robots. and we were going to pick second. We go through, and we were 16th pick is where we were because we were in the number 1 alliance slot. Those robots fell all the way through. Everybody else missed them, and we were able to get our top 2 defensive robots for our competition. Then you all know who 254 is, right? So in the finals of the competition, 498 was our top defensive robot. They went out there. 254 had been scoring roughly in the mid-20s number of cargo in a match. They scored 10 in the final match of the day because 498 just completely shut them down as a defensive robot. So this is a case of design at the beginning of the year. Design your robot to your capabilities. Don't try to build a 250. If you can't, don't think you build a 254 robot. Don't build a 254 robot. Okay? Build a robot that you could think that you can run and operate and will be successful. It is more important to build a robot that you can finish in 4 weeks and get driver practice with than a robot that will do fancy things and that you finish the night before your first competition. Okay? This is your goal is to have a robot done in a month and then have your driver and your programmers working with that robot for 2+ weeks before your first competition. Our robot Yi must have driven this last spring. I'm guessing he had 100 hours of practice by the time he got to championships. Don't do that again. This is designed to your capability, your team's capabilities. Understand what you can do, and also understand that you can reach out to other experienced teams who will advise you about what you can do. All right, so please do that because we want to show up at competitions. One of the proudest things I ever have remembered is at Utah Regional, which I pointed out. Our goal was to get every team there to run an auto routine by the end of the competition, and we did it. Every team ran an auto routine by the end of the competition because that was our goal to as a team to do that. So
Right. One of the big things we do during kickoff weekend is limiting our scope. So like for our kickoff in 2022, we said we don't want a robot that can score from anywhere on the field. We want to focus on scoring right from the edge of the tarmac. And we decided that so we didn't need that protected hanger shot, but it would be nice if it worked, but the regression was focused on being at that edge of the tarmac. And another example would be that last year we built off-season robots. I was actually the operator for our 4414 clone. We did not get any driver practice. We finished that robot the night before.
in the hotel
We were
room.
programming it in the hotel. It did not ever move until that first day of competition. And I went in there and I didn't know how to operate the robot. And we also had a turret which did not function, so we just Claycoed it together. It just had one angle shot, and that was what we did. Questions?
Super quick question. What does SEAL stand for?
Oh,
I don't know. It's
Is
an
it something
acronym
that
for
it stands
something. Anyways, they're focused on working with our alliance mates, and
Yeah.
it's actually the first group that we set up, and then it evolved into Citrus Service. We realized that we could actually devote a lot more team members to helping other teams, and so how many are there? 8 or 10?
Citrus Service currently?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, probably we bring around 8 people to a regional, or 6 to 8 people, just
Yeah.
dedicated to helping other teams.
Right, and then our SEALs is just 2
Yeah.
team members and a mentor.
Do you have a question, or was it?
Well, I wanted to speak to the third pick mentality.
Hmm.
I noticed you guys were talking a bit about your third pick wanting to do defense, but I would argue that in this game sometimes it made way more sense that you use the third pick as the meta and sacrifice your first and second pick to make sure you maximize your third pick.
Not really. We haven't ever pursued that strategy. We have picked third picks as offensive robots, for example. So in 2019, we ended up having 2 of our offensive picks, top 10 picks that were still available at Division. So we picked them. Often the best offensive robots are also the best defenders. So There was actually, and we had one example last year. Our shooter broke in our last match, and we were facing probably the second best offensive robot in our division, and we were able to close down their scoring because we were able to drive so well. So that we kind of had that philosophy of a team is a good scorer, likely they're a good driver, and they can both defend and score. But it's really risky, especially if you're playing if you're in the top 3 picks, that the 22nd through 24th robot ability is really iffy. It's super risky to play for what the third robot is going to do because they may not be there.
Well, the reason I bring it up is just because we had a very bizarre strategy in our divisions. Basically, we had a good second pick as offense, but our third pick actually could still score 20 balls in offense.
Uh-huh.
So when we and our second pick were getting defended, we would turn that into quick defense on traffic on the other team to maximize that.
Yeah, and we had actually 2 robots that could put up probably 15 or so, and they would score offense as well. We found that they were better at playing defense than scoring, and we were able. One of the things is that our drivers able to get away from defense really quite well. So we would just yeah. So that's kind of the way that was the way our strategy was. But I mean, but the example you saw our first match, right? So what we did is we gave up our offensive in 2013. We gave up our offensive capability to maximize our first picks ability, and then our third robot, they didn't have any scoring ability, but they played great defense. So that was kind of the different roles that we had. But it was that we were sacrificing for that other robot. So, yeah.
How do you handle in your pick list creation? Let's say a team struggles for their first 5 matches, but they pick something or whatever, and they're just killer, good. And then when you average the data, the data says they're kind of mediocre. Do you have like a time history kind of stuff?
Right.
Or
So our viewer actually it logs all of the matches individually as well. So you could click into the robot, like past the averages and everything, and you can look at their performance in each match. So when we sit down and we make our pick list, we can manually, so it sorts itself using a formula, but then we look at each robot and we look at the robot like next to it, and we say, we just do pairwise comparison. We think, is this robot better than this robot? Do we want one more? And at that point, then we could go and manually say, oh, I saw them improve so much today, and I think they're going to be consistent for the rest of this competition.
Yeah, so actually the Utah competition's a great example of how we sorted that out. 399 ended up being our first pick, but they had a terrible first day. The first 5 matches, they weren't doing anything at all. They were having difficulties, and then they went on fire, and our data picked up the fact that they were the second best robot in the competition the next 5 matches, because we had in a graph that showed the individual matches on our viewer. We show graphically, and we also have an average of the last 4 matches in our data. So you can switch between the overall competition data and the last 4 matches, and so we're able to look at the last 4 matches, and we went into the draft pick list, and I looked at our last 4 matches, and I said, oh, 399 is killing it here, and I ran down to the Alliance captain and said, 399's our number 1 pick, 399, which they're all going like, but the data doesn't say that. I'm going, yes, it does. It's just different data.
Right.
you ever scratch anybody off because they were a disaster in their life?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that happens. Robots have disastrous last couple of days, like us at Chesney Champs in 2018. Our second day, we just totally collapsed. We went from 1st to 8th. So,
Yeah. We also log in-cap time, so if you happen to be seated high, you're looking more for consistency than like a high ceiling. So sometimes we have to think about how reliable a robot is.
yeah,
So,
and
alright.
that's actually with the new Alliance, our new playoff structure. If they do double elimination, reliability is going to be more important than it has been in the past.
So one last question. I'm sorry for hogging it, but it's interesting stuff. So you guys are quite often picking. You guys sometimes are picked, but you guys are usually doing picking. But what advice would you give a team like that? Let's say they're the number. Well, maybe they're ranked like 10th or 8th or something like that. And is there advice that is there advice for like how can a team like approach a team like yours? Do you take that into consideration if you're approached by a team saying, hey, this is our strengths or weaknesses? Is there a way of approaching that isn't a humiliation or groveling or that might, but also might be persuasive? Does that work ever? Or are you guys pretty much like, no, we don't want to, we're going to look at our own data, we're not going to listen?
I mean, so sometimes like other students, they come up to me and they ask, hey, we would like you to like take a look at our robot. I think we would be a good alliance partner. And like, yes, we do, like, I remember these things, and we do like consider it. And I think a good opportunity to do that is if you happen to share a match. That would be like a great moment to display your capabilities directly together. If you happen to work together really well, that would be like a major plus, especially since like our drive team is also paying attention to like how well everyone's working together. Like I'm also there like talking to their strategists. So it's not like a lost cause to go and ask somebody. Like I think it's always worth it to give it a try.
Yeah, so 2017 or 2015 is a great example. So the fourth robot in that alliance was Griffin Gear, we picked them because they were compatible with the arms, with the grabbers, which we actually ended up not deploying, but it turned out to be a strategic decision because it kept 1114 and 148 from deploying their grabbers on the other side, because we had also the nuclear option as well. But the thing why we picked them was because we had been at a regional with them, and they have been really good to work with. We actually picked them first before we decided on picking 1671. We actually, to us in 118, because we both had really good experiences with them, we said, they're our first, we're going to pick them. We're just going to put them at the top of the list. If they're available, they're it. Because we thought that they had a solid team, they had a good organization, and they were very cooperative with us in competitions. And so that's really important is your chemistry that you have with the other drive team, that actually plays into it. And we've had teams that we said, no, we're not going to drive. We don't want to drive with that team because we did not have a good experience with them in a match. And there's lots of teams that we've gone like, oh yeah, Mike Corsetto will come back and say, that was awesome working with them. Bump them up, move them to the top of our list or near the top of our list. So we have that kind of experience. It really does play in. And coming up to a team in the stands, you don't tell them what you can do. What you do is you ask them what are the things they're looking for, and then try to do those things in a match. That's really in terms of the selling point. You're not going to change how they approach their strategy because they already have one coming into the competition. What you need to do is figure out how you fit into their plans in doing that.
It is now 6:15, so if you had like something scheduled, we can go, but otherwise, I believe we have like a list of resources at the end here.
And the slides will be posted.
Yeah, the slides will be posted on our website. This entire presentation will also be posted as a video. We also have a video about our scouting system. We have a video about, I believe we have another presentation about match strategy and also like strategic design by Mike and Austin, who are two of our other mentors. But thank you guys for attending. I hope you had a great time. And yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.